Hey everybody, Chris Herman here today for another episode of On Deck. Today I have a really great conversation with a friend and colleague, John Mackenzie, who is the Senior Vice President of Automotive at Iheart Media. I've known John off and on for probably 20 years, and he has had a tremendously successful career serving the retail automotive industry. And today we talk about all kinds of things, digital audio, what it's like to work in the retail car business from a service perspective, his career path, and we touch on some health and fitness and just cool business and success tips. So I know that you'll really enjoy this episode. I hope you get a lot out of it. And without further ado, here we go. It's John Mackenzie. Hi, John. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you, Chris?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is John Mackenzie. And John, if I get your, I'm going to not do the exact title, but you're a high-level executive with Iheart Media.
Yeah, Senior VP, Automotive. Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
Senior
right.
VP Automotive, serving dealers all around the country.
Yep.
We met via the telephone probably, it might be 20 years ago.
It's been a while
that we first spoke to each other.
You were at Zimmerman. I was at the Plain Dealer, Cleveland
Yes.
Plain Dealer, which was a top 20 newspaper at the time. And it's funny because that was the king at that time. The newspaper was king. At that time. It's gone a long way.
Well, it's good to see you. Welcome. Yeah. You are on deck, sir. And we'll begin here and see where we go.
Great.
Being that we are both in the retail automotive advertising and marketing space, and have for years been working, serving dealers in a number of capacities. Clearly, this is a unique time that we are facing in the business, particularly on our side of the business. I guess a good place, or a question that I would ask is how has it been for you guys, over the last, 5-6 months as we've gone through this inventory situation? What are you seeing with dealers, and how are you guys able to continue to serve dealers and help them market their stores?
So one of the things I see, and going into different markets, like you said, I'm in the Midwest and the Southeast, is the influencer campaigns that we have in place. And radio was the original influencers, with endorsements.
Right.
Those campaigns you see stay in place. So even when they're canceling everything else, we see those campaigns stay in place because that's their brand ambassador. That's they lock into that, and a lot of them will keep that person for 10, 15 years, So for those who might not be as aware, you're really talking about, a high profile spokesperson for a dealership. And in this case, you're saying that the dealerships they're sticking with that through this time. Yeah, they are sticking with it. And I can tell you, we've had dealers cut back. And we've had some dealers go dark, but for the most part, we've had dealers, stick to the plan. I think they still think they need to brand, they need to be out there, they need to keep their order banks full,
Right.
So they can continue to turn their inventory. So that's definitely what we've seen.
Now, for those that aren't familiar, Iheart Media is and has been, the current name for what was once Clear Channel Radio, correct?
Yep.
So is it still considered Clear Channel Radio, or has it been entirely, you guys are 100% rebranded as Iheart,
100%. Right? And what's funny is, nobody knows what Clear Channel is. When I go into hotels, as soon as I pull my corporate credit card out, it says Iheart. And so somebody who's 20-something says, wow, you work for Iheart, that's really cool. And I'm like, yeah, it is really cool, But so they all understand Iheart Media, Iheart Radio.
Right.
But Clear Channel, was not a name that really anybody even remembers, really.
Well, but historically speaking, Clear Channel was one of the first large consolidators of radio stations around the country, and that has to be 20, it's been maybe 25 years since that process began.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So in 150 markets, 850 radio stations. So we've the biggest radio group out there.
Right. And I think the advantage of that was that it allowed there to be you had a lot of local stations all around the country, some of them mom and pop organizations or local businesses, and this tied them into a larger network, and Clear Channel was able to bring all these stations some economies of scale, some consistency in programming around the nation, and so that as people traveled from market to market around the country, there were some consistencies in what they were listening to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And some people say it's making it more corporate, with radio, but it gives us so much leverage and to put our name out there. We have the Iheart Music Awards, we have our Las Vegas festival. So a lot of different festivals, and it's just that branding of that Iheart that really, really drives it.
Well, and again, for those who, again, we're bringing up to speed, the Iheart piece really came in because that's where when Clear Channel, when you guys made the dive into digital streaming radio and audio, Iheart was the name of the app and the and that avenue, right? Sort of like a Pandora, but that was your deal.
And it started as Iheart Radio, and then we just took the Clear Channel name and made it Iheart Media, because that's really what most people, they remember as Iheart Radio. So with that, we just did the name change with that.
It's interesting to think about it, because it's like it takes, I love radio. It's really saying what we stand for. We love music. We love broadcasting music in whatever format that works for the potential listener, because you still have tons of terrestrial radio, stations, and now of course the Iheart. I'm curious. What is the breakup of the listenership if you look at the whole company? Like, what percentage listen via a traditional station and what percentage are listening through Iheart?
What would you think it would be?
My guess at this point in time is I would have to say that I'd go 60-40 in favor of the online, the Iheart piece.
Yeah, it's more like the opposite. So it's about 70-30. So it's actually still, most of the listening is terrestrial.
Really?
That. Yeah. And then the app comes at about 30%, but continuing to grow with that.
That's fascinating. Okay, so I learned something right out of the gate here.
Yeah, what the apps helped us do is the data that we have on it. It's first-party data, and it's on the phone, as you know. So everything when it's on the phone, when you're an app on the phone and that stuff. So we have great data that we put together in smart audio packages, and we can target, through that app. And so that gives us a whole different, viewpoint with that stuff there.
And data is such a huge part of marketing at this point in time. I mean, if it might be almost the lead part at this point in time. It's we're still in a business where what you say is important and how you say it is important. But we're really now at a time in marketing and advertising where audience cultivation, audience creation is really where it's at. And that all comes from the data. So you guys are able to collect, tons of specific data on your listeners using the app. What are some of the things that are really working for you guys in terms of then being able to take that data and help a dealership effectively market their store?
So we can basically, the app users are P1 users. We call them P1. So they're going to be the more heavy users, that listen terrestrially, but also on the app there. So what we can do is we can hit all kinds of life groups with that. We can target specific to brands, like as far as automotive is concerned, with that. So we call it smart audio, and we use it sometimes to reverse the buy on the radio station. So with the radio station, we'll use the app information, and we'll dial it into almost reverse market with smart audio. So smart audio is taking it's a different way to buy media than traditionally you would see, because you're buying day parts and everything like that, where we're using the smart audio to kind of reverse it into the radio buy too. So just kind of showing agencies, and it's been a slow process to get people to kind of break from that, but it's definitely something interesting as we move in the future. Like you said, we do Oracle does some consulting with us, and they're like, the greatest asset you have is that app, because that app, it can lead to so many things with that data. And it's like you said, with data, we see that we have a relationship with Urban Science, and so we have Autoflight data, so it's daily RDR data. With that, it's great to be able to have that, because we can see, what I always say is do you want a weather report when you're taking your boat out for 60 days ago with Cross-Sell or Polk, or do you want something for today? With that. So that just gives us a lot of data on that. And as you were saying, just leading with data. And in fact, we're in the process nobody really knows this yet, but we're in the process of partnering with one of the biggest third-party aggregators in the space, and it's all to use their data with that. So use their data in audio and video packages with that. But it's huge to get a massive nameplate like that has that type of, automotive data.
Mm. It makes me think of something. Certainly we live in an age where, at this point in time, everybody realizes that there's an enormous amount of data being gathered, and you've got, of course, everybody wants to make sure that there's privacy, that their privacy is respected, that this information is not shared erroneously. And I think there would be probably a lot of consumers that have a negative feeling about all this data acquisition, right? Which I can understand. On the flip side, because we're marketers and we're in this business, the data acquisition and the hyper-targeting of the data is so meaningful and so effective for marketers because it allows them to be more efficient with their spend, right?
Right.
We used to just kind of blanket areas with a message, and so let's say there was 100,000 people in a particular area. We used to say, well, that maybe 2% of those people were in the market to buy a car.
Right.
The data is really aimed at trying to help marketers reach the 2% now. It doesn't mean that we're not reaching more.
Right.
But we want to reach the people that are most likely to be ready to buy, so that the media source in and of itself is an effective tool of communicating, right?
Yeah, is effective. And I think, from what you and I, like 20 years ago, it's attribution. I mean, attribution, I think, is the biggest change. When we'd run a newspaper ad, as I was back in the Plain Dealer, you'd have 100 people in the showroom. You knew it was working because it was the only real outlet you had. Now, everything's so fragmented, that you have to be able to show attribution in some way. And you and I both know as marketers, there's no silver bullet.
No.
Like, there's not one thing that sells a car. It's ultimately multiple things that do it, even though every vendor would tell you it's them that helped you sell the car,
Sure.
with all that stuff there. So that's kind of it. It's multi-channel marketing, and it's showing some kind of an assist, right? We have to show them some kind of assist and reporting on that, and that's what's important, especially with dealers today.
Yeah, I agree. Do me a favor, tug your microphone just a little bit, just pull it a little bit closer to you,
Yep.
like maybe like a couple more inches.
Yep.
And the attribution piece, it's a tricky one, right? Because at the end of the day, I think what most dealers and most of our clients that we've worked with over all these years, as we moved from traditional into digital, there was, number one, there was an expectation that behavior be measurable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from the impression to the click to the lead to the sale, that's what everybody's wanted to tie through, and dealers have had an expectation, right, that I'm spending X number of dollars on a particular media source. I know I got so many impressions, I got so many clicks, I got so many leads, but in many cases still that thread that runs from the source directly to the sale is still very fuzzy. A, because it's hard to measure accurately, yep. And B, because you have so many sources, right? Let's say a dealership is using Iheart Media and Iheart Radio. Well, that's not the only thing that they're doing. There's multiple sources for which they're communicating their message. So it ends up being a group effort in which we all get to say, well, for the most part, we helped make that happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of what I try to do is look at something like, what did you change? Let's look at one thing that you may have changed, with that. And that's why I try to show, like, and you probably do yourself, but I probably have 200 dealers Google Analytics, in my portal. And so I can look at them and kind of see what one thing did you change and why did we see a spike up there? So generally when I see somebody do a spot an hour radio campaign, I can see it just impact the GA. I see the GA in new users. I see the GA spike in that period of time. So that's kind of how I look at it, because reporting can be skewed any way you want. I was at Cox Automotive for 7 years, and sometimes we would do stuff that was like we'd make it to our advantage, some of the reporting. So I always like to look at the GA and kind of that's how I'm evaluating it. You know, I'm evaluating, because as an agency, you could have the most amazing advertising campaign ever, and if that store's got some broken processes, you know, it may not work, and it's not your fault. You're doing everything on your end.
Right.
It's just, you know,
it's a very challenging beast, this industry that we're in, right? Because, you know, we're hired as marketers to drive traffic, right? And we can do that. And in this day and age, you can show all kinds of data that shows essentially where the traffic came from, how it impacted the website, how it translated into leads. And if you have access to the CRM like we do, you know, you can see, okay, well, here's how many cars we sold. But you're right. There's so many points along that way from traffic in to actually the sale, that there's a lot of areas that are out of control. You know, I know you see this. We still run into situations where you're driving lots of leads and lots of phone calls into a dealership, and they're not answering the phone. You know, they're not. I mean, it's just like the basic fundamentals of Business 101 are not always getting handled, and that can be frustrating as a traffic driver. Let's just say that's what we are. When you feel like, hey, man, we're sending traffic to the store. You know, there's some things here that need to be fixed on your end. And that's when you know if you have a good partnership or a not good partnership, right? Yeah. If you have the good partnership where you can have that conversation and collectively work on that, that's a great deal.
We even take it to where we do secret shops. So we're doing a secret shop on a dealer, and it's hard for them sometimes to, you know, call the baby ugly. But we go in and we show them, like, okay, this store, it's a big dealer group, this store took 3 days to get back to us. This store took 5 minutes to get back to us. And they squirm in their seat and they don't like it. But really, when you're done, they're like, I needed that. I needed someone to kind of, you know, see what it was from the outside and everything. And you're right. If that's broken, you know, like you said, the leads could be coming in, but if you're not responding to them, and we see that, we have a 250 chair call center. So when we purchased one of the data companies we didn't even know they had this 250 chair call center. So we purchased the company for the data, and this is what we get out of it. So we take that and we move it to Nashville, Tennessee, where you know, our digital hub is located there. Now this 250 chair call center has allowed us, during a time when inventory is really tight, to work the dealer service drive with that. So that's been really impactful for us, because right now you have to come with efficiency solutions to dealers right now.
Yes.
Because they're not necessarily wanting to do that big spend. They're like, help me become more efficient. And I think outsourcing, especially an outbound BDC, is important, because a lot of dealers don't do a great job. Like, their people are great taking calls from, you know, website and everything like that.
Right.
But picking up that phone and making that outbound developmental business call becomes tough. So we've actually used this, and it's morphed into, for a major equity mining tool software, we're basically manning the phones for them. So they understand, like, you know, an equity mining tool is important, but you have to be able to make the phone calls, you know?
You know, it makes me think of something that, you know, as marketers, sometimes we can look at a dealer and say, oh, well, they're not answering the phones right. Or, you know, listen, we all have holes in our business somewhere, right? I mean, it's very, very rare that any business is running like to perfection, right?
For sure.
Why? Because we're all dealing with a lot of the same things. You know, you've got all kinds of things that you're faced with on a day-to-day basis that take your attention and take time. And so to say that a dealer, if they're not answering their phones the best way, you know, to say that, you know, that's a real negative. Well, you don't know what they're dealing with in a day-to-day operation at the store, and everybody needs help. And I think what I have seen over the last, 10 years particularly, is I've seen a lot of companies, marketing companies, agencies, and what used to be traditional media sources that have moved into the digital realm. I've seen a lot of these companies change their focus, and the change has been to be a partner and to be a resource and a helpful resource to the dealer, right? To really help them improve their business in any way, shape, or form. And, you mentioned the previous company and how sometimes, the data was presented in a way to highlight the positives, right? And we've all done that to some degree over time. But I think we really operate in a world now where dealers want a clear, honest assessment of what it is that you're doing. Is it working? Is it not working? And are you bringing some value to the table that's helping me run my business?
Right. Yeah. And how could we get better? And I think like with us as marketers and you as an agency and us as a media company is we're trying to do things to help them get better. I mean, so really some of the solutions we have are all about those efficiencies. So basically we're looking at their lead flow, how they handle that. And it's kind of strange. You probably think we're a radio company and we do that, but we decided like 5 years ago to step on the gas with automotive. And so we really put a lot of money into it and everything like that and training people. And it's not typically what you would see, 5-10 years ago from a radio company, but that's how we've evolved.
That's really great. What when you guys look at what you do, and we all, obviously everybody, we're doing this, to earn a living and build our companies and what have you. But at the end of the day, the greatest satisfaction, and I'm sure you agree with this, is knowing that you really helped your dealer partner succeed, right?
Right.
So how do you guys look at success? Like, what does success in helping your dealer partners mean to you guys?
It's super important to us because really it's not like, as advertising, it's long-term relationships. That's what works there. So it's not like we're looking to sell something to them and get out of there.
Right.
We're looking to continue to grow, to be a partner with them with that. And it's in advertising, it's all about that. It's about, the long-term relationships and making sure they feel that they're getting a receipt at the end of every month. Mm-hmm. And that's what I always tell my people that work for me is like, you go to Home Depot and you get a receipt. Why shouldn't they get a receipt for everything, they do? Because other vendors are giving them a receipt. Mm-hmm. So the same thing with radio as far as, we have a product called Veritone where we can run the GA over the spot schedule. So we're able to, see like what creative may have worked better or what, what time, did it spike at this time when the spot ran, with that type of information. So we're always trying to provide them with a receipt. As you know, it's like you got to make sure that you're showing them, tracking and attribution and how we're helping your business.
Well, and you have to show that, you have to communicate it, and you want to confirm that, right? Like my friend Jim Ziegler, who, the alpha dog, famous guy in the car business, right, runs these wonderful training conferences and what have you. And I remember one of the things that I really liked that he did, amongst many things, is he would say, like throughout the day, he'd say, are y'all getting good value out of this, right? Are you learning something today? He would ask, right? And to get that confirmation from the audience, right? And as marketers and as marketing partners to our dealers, we have to do that as well too. Are you seeing the value in this, right?
Yep.
Here's the receipt, right? Do you agree that this is providing your business with opportunity? And that's what you want in a partnership, is that type of communication.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And it's tougher, like we were talking about like 20 years ago we did this. It's tougher to be a marketer, because you do have to provide that. You have to provide, multi-channel marketing and everything. So it's not easy. And think of, these guys are just trying to sell cars,
right?
It's our job to help them, they don't know everything about marketing. We're there to help them and be their partner, with that.
Yeah, in a way we're singing for our supper, right?
Right,
a little bit,
right.
You've got to continue to bring value. And we've always operated that way where it's like, we've got to bring value. Mm-hmm. I think in this day and age, any business, and we'll focus on retail automotive, when they hire a company like ours, there's an expectation that you're going to deliver. You're going to bring excellence. And it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect all the time, right? But there is the expectation that, okay, you're going to deliver what you said you're going to deliver. And that's kind of a given, right? At the end of the day, the differentiators, as you mentioned, really fall into the relationship side, right? Mm-hmm. When you really form that strong bond with your client that allows you to be honest with one another, whether the fault is on one side or the other, if the problem is one side or the other, opportunity is one side or the other. Those are the partnerships that really last over time and are satisfying. And I'm sure you guys have plenty of those, right?
We do. We got a lot of long-term customers with that, but it's just we're always evolving. So Bob Pittman is our CEO. Mm-hmm. He started MTV and that. So Bob's pretty innovative, and he basically says in one way or another, don't become a Blockbuster Video. You know, I mean, Blockbuster Video, we all remember it. It was a, you know, this Blockbuster Awards and everything, you know, they had it all going on. But I think there's a Harvard Business Review study on how not to run a business, and it was Blockbuster Video, because you literally have to always be evolving, you know, and you know that, like we were talking about VIN level marketing, right? Like it's super hot right now. Next year, it may not be, you know, it may be dead as can be at that point. So you just don't know. You got to be evolving all the time in our business, you know.
Well, and I know for a fact that you have had a bird's eye view on a lot of that, right? Because maybe not everybody realizes, but I know you when we first started speaking together years ago when you worked for the Cleveland Plain Dealer.
Right.
And no industry or no, you know, media company faced that do or die transition more than the newspaper industry. So when everything starts moving to the internet, it was like, okay, the newspapers are dead. And I really think the newspapers were actually the first ones to really get crazy serious about, we got to do some digital stuff, right? Yes. We're going to be dead.
It's funny that you say that, because I worked for them, and when I worked with you, and then I got promoted to national automotive manager. So I started going around the country to LA and Chicago, and I had agencies tell me, like, yeah, we're not doing print anymore. We're going all digital. And I'd come home and I'm like, I got to get out of this business. Like, it was like, so I changed, and I went with the digital company. So you're right, it changed quite a bit. And if you remember back then, it was, you know, the paper was king. I mean, it totally was king, but I think it hit them first, and they felt they did have to pivot, and it happened quickly, I think, you know, so absolutely, you know.
Well, you know, and it started with the newspaper companies, then the radio companies, and then the TV stations. Everybody, like, you know, the traditional, or as it's now called, legacy media, you know, somehow that word sounds better, apparently, I don't know, or it's cooler. You know, everybody had to scramble to find a way to operate in the new world, if you will. And, you know, we were no different in the sense that, you know, when I came up, I worked at Zimmerman, then was in the retail business for 5 years and started my own shop. And we were, at that time, we were a traditional shop. It was print, radio, and TV, and direct mail. And we were damn good at it, you know, and that worked. And then the tide shifted. And I'll never forget, you know, I had a big account, and we lost a big account because they had been sort of hinting at, hey, you need to look at like Facebook, you need to look, and at that time I was too slow to respond to that. And I remember we lost a big account because we didn't know how to do Facebook. And it was just one of those, it was like, oh, no, you know, this is a real moment. And then us and our whole crew, we just dove into digital, and we became a digital shop. Now we're a balance of both. We do digital, we still do traditional, you know, and we still pride ourselves in the ability to help dealers put that whole strategy together and then execute that whole strategy. But we all had to adapt, you know, during those times. And I think that that's been a real good thing for us in companies like yours.
Yep.
The ones that were able to adapt and then reinvent themselves, and still in this day and age be completely 100% viable opportunities to communicate a message, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, radio, what I liked about radio was, you know, if you want somebody to remember your name or your URL, you need to say it over and over again.
Right.
That's the thing. You have to pound in your head. And radio is great at that because it's all about frequency and pounding that frequency. And so I think nowadays to get somebody to search, you have to pound that out there and pound that name and pound the URL out there and get them to search for you on Google, because that's where it all starts, right there.
And I think that's, you know, that's such an important message. Yes, can a business operate successfully and survive being on the receiving end of the marketing funnel? And funnel's not the right word, but let's just take, you know, a dealership that sells 150 cars in a major metro, right? Dealership that sells 150 cars in a major metro doesn't have a huge marketing budget, right? So what are you looking at? You know, you're looking at a store that maybe has 40, 50 grand a month to spend on marketing, but in a major metro, that can be expensive to get out into the big broadcast. So stores, you know, smaller stores in major metros that don't have the big budget, can they survive and be successful by having a great website merchandising and marketing, you know, paid search, SEO, paid social, third-party lead providers, a little bit of digital media, but that's not about broadcasting a message, but more about receiving the people who are searching coming in, right?
Right.
Absolutely. There's tons of stores that can and should only do that. But there is a even larger number of stores that are in the position to not only do that, but to communicate to a larger audience about who they are, what they stand for, what they can offer that's different than their competition, that when done with that old sort of traditional, and when I say traditional, I'm not saying traditional radio and TV, video and audio goes down a zillion different channels right now, right?
Absolutely.
So using video and audio to say, here's who we are, here's why you should do business with us, that is still a very important impression-based focus that does drive people into the matrix, if you will, who start searching. They're like, yeah, I've heard of these people 100 times. And we've seen a dial back on that right now that we were discussing before that I think it's a mistake. For a short period of time, fine. But I think we're going to see dealers needing to step it up.
I think it's a mistake too, because I think what happens is I think what we see with radio, I'm sure with TV to a degree, it'll make your digital stronger, with that. So, and the proof is in the pudding, basically. So we'll do a conquest email, or we'll target somebody socially, or whatever the case is. But then we do a radio campaign or an OTT campaign, and we see the clicks just get better. I mean, as far as that. So they know your brand, they know who you are, and as they continue to hit that same audience, you'll see the digital side get better. You'll see open rates get better. You'll see click-through rates get better. Time on site get better, with that. So just the thing of knowing you and, show me that you know me, basically,
It makes me remember the strongest example I've ever been associated with that. We had a dealership here in West Palm Beach, and we took over the account, digital and traditional, and this was they were a big traditional store at the time. They spent a lot on radio and TV. They were really starting to get into digital. Now, we took over the store, and they were spending $40,000 a month on PPC, which was a ton.
It's a ton.
It was a ton. This was like 8 years ago, okay? Yeah. They were spending $40,000 a month on PPC. And I remember going in and saying, we can cut that in half. And the operator was like, Chris, don't do that yet. I'm telling you, we're probably going to spend this for it. I was like, okay. So we did it. We built out the campaigns. We set the geographic regions of the campaigns. We built out the campaigns, keyword strategy, everything. It was freaking tight. Put that in place, $40,000 budget. And at the same time, we were spending let's say it was $100,000 on radio and TV, okay? So we started off and we came out of the gates and we had a great month. I don't remember how many cars we said. It was a lot. It was like 270, 300 cars for this store. That was a big volume number. And each month we kept seeing the paid search budget go up. And the reason that it was going up is because we kept increasing radio and TV. We changed nothing about the geographic footprint of the digital campaign. We didn't change the actual campaign structure. Little tweaks and adjustments here. Keyword structure. Everything was pretty consistent. It didn't go up just because more people were searching. It went up because we were spending each month $20, $30, $40, $50,000 more on traditional. Right. The more we spent on traditional, the more that digital spend went up. Not because we were reaching a bigger area, but because we were driving tons of people into the digital space, and it was so obvious, right? The only difference was we were spending more on traditional.
Right.
And it drove that traffic up, and it drove the retail numbers of the store up month after month. I've never seen anything in my life that was quite as acute as this particular example. But what it did was it very clearly said to me, the more people you speak to with a higher level of frequency, the more people you're going to drive into this experience. And that's exactly what we saw.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
100%. And I've seen stores. I have Chicago as a market, and I'll see stores that they hit the CPC heavy, and they look back at it and think why was I spending that much, on it? Because I think your conversion rates, if you look at your conversion rates on a website, you're going to see organic and direct traffic convert better. Why? Because they're probably searching for you. And also direct traffic, they're bypassing Google. They're going directly to the site there, with that. But I think that's the case. I mean, I think that CPC will drive, and you need to have it. It's going to drive people to your website. I just see the conversion at almost 4 times the rate with a good organic strategy.
Absolutely. And we see the same thing. It's such an interesting world that we live in, because there's no one thing that is the thing that works, right? It's a combination of all of it working together. And what we have always found for years and years and years is the dealerships with the most consistent strategy month in, month out. Doesn't mean you're not making tweaks and adjustments or try this month, but the ones that just stay focused on a consistent strategy month in, month out, they're always the ones that get the best results.
Yeah. It's a culmination, like you said. Like I was at NADA one time, and one of the speakers was saying, so you go out and you have some drinks, and you have a beer, and you have a vodka, and you go down at Long Island iced tea maybe. Then you have a shot of tequila at the end of the night. So what you do is you wake up with a hangover, and you're like, God, that shot of tequila, that just did me in. No, that didn't do you in. It was everything leading up to that. And it's kind of how marketing is too. It's a culmination of what you're doing. And you're right, it's consistency. It's the fact of being consistent. Those are the strongest stores that stay consistent with it.
I agree. Well, John, clearly we're preaching to the choir here.
right. Exactly.
Preaching to the choir. So I'll just shift directions just a little bit. You've been around this business for a long time. Tell me a little bit, like, what brought you into the retail automotive business? How did you come into this world?
It's funny. I was kind of thrown into it. I started at the plain dealer, and I was on actually the non-auto side at first, and I went into auto, and it was kind of, the dealers, were definitely tough, dealing with the dealers, but it somehow gets into your blood. And as you're in it, you can't see being any other way. So in the position I'm in right now, I oversee 50 markets, but I still like going out to the dealerships. I still like going out there. They're my people when I get out there with the dealers. I really like being out with them and the conversations. And you grew up in the business. It's like, it's just something, once it's in your blood, like, it's just something that takes over, Now
I'm curious, because I'm assuming that, did you have anybody in your family that was in the car business?
No.
So you go to work for the paper, and then you ultimately kind of get thrown into the retail automotive
I go to
side.
work for the paper, and I work then for Cox Automotive, and so I'm in stores all the time. They promote me to handling Kelley Blue Book ICO. What is that right now? I'm the only person in the country that didn't work at an auto dealership that's handling this product, because the product is very much, you got to know the auctions, and you got to train dealers on how to hold gross and everything like that, and putting a number on a vehicle, and there's a lot of training involved with it. So that was kind of the first part of it. I learned so much about that, and learned the auctions, and of course they own Manheim, so that really helped me out further in my career. And then coming over here, and we've hired so many people, from whether it be from Cox or some of the retail side, because I'm a big proponent, like, it's automotive first, digital second, and then radio at that point. Radio we can teach you. It's pretty easy, reach and frequency, right, with that. But when automotive and how to talk to dealers, that's a whole different story. You understand the trials and tribulations that they have,
we were talking before and again just now about, once it gets in your blood. For you, what was it about, the personalities or the conversations or the relationships with dealers that really resonated with you?
I think they're real, as I mean, they're real. If they don't like something, they'll throw it right back in your face. And I think, I appreciate that honesty. And they're also, we've always talked about this, you could get into an argument with the dealer, and he'll say the next day, like, hey, when are you coming by? It's over. That's how they operate. I mean, so, because they operate in that world,
Right.
So it's different from any really type of other business relationship. And then also the fact that you can make impact on it. Like, try going into Kohl's and talking to them this week and see if they'll change their strategies. But a car dealer, they'll change strategy if they feel that, because you got a 30-day report card, as we said.
Yes.
And so you always have to come in and, resell your value prop, every single month.
I just think that there's just this entrepreneurial spirit. There's that, like, gritty toughness, that the men and women in the business have. There's almost always a sense of humor. There's a sense of, fucking let's do it.
Right,
there's like that. There's that eternal optimism. I mean, how many times have you gone into a store, right, where the operator has taken over a dump? Like, it's a shithole, right? You know, they're selling 30 cars, and the guy goes in, and when you say, you know, tell me about the store, they all say the same thing. This is a great opportunity. Right?
Yeah.
I love that, right?
Yeah.
It's like that pervades the car business, this sense of like, I can make it here. I can turn this into something that's a positive. And I think I'm sure that exists in other businesses, but there's something about the retail car business.
It's a confidence and swagger too.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody like, they take over. They're like, it's always the guy that was before me. Like, I don't want to do what he did, right? Because like whatever he did, I'm going to do something different, you know, with that. So that is always, but there's a little bit of swagger to that, especially guys that have been doing it for a while.
Right.
You know, they know, look, I can turn this store around. And a lot of my dealer groups, they'll buy, you know, underperforming stores. They get in there, they buy the store, they pay it off, and they go in there and just turn that store on its head, you know? I mean, they can really turn it around, you know?
That's such a satisfying thing to see too, right? You know, when you see a new operator go into a store and take it over and take command of that business, put in a good marketing strategy, put in good sales, you know, processes and procedures. And when you see, and particularly when you're part of helping that process, and you see those numbers start to move, it's like, oh,
yeah,
so great.
It is great. And when I handled that ICO, we'd go in and train, and we tried to get him to train to basically hold gross on the trade and everything with that, and get the customer to give up their number with the car. And so many GMs are like, I can't, my people just won't do it. They won't do it. I'm like, you're the boss. Like, you know, because the guys that are strong, they'll go in and say, you are doing this. You're doing it as far as that, you know, because this is our process. Just like you said, they set up those processes and you follow that process.
Right.
You know, so that's always impressed me with guys that, you know, from the top down.
You know, having as yourself a very successful and long-lasting career in this business, what are some of the things that you could share that have been attributes to your success, things that have helped you continue to grow and succeed in this industry?
I think early on for me, it was just discipline, you know, like as I was going in, and one of the things at Cox, we'd always work at home, and some guys could do that, other people couldn't, you know. I remember my boss, when I came over here, you know, he said, you know, we don't work from home because you turn the TV on, or you'd talk to your neighbors. I said, listen, I've been doing it for 7 years. I've never once turned the TV on.
Right.
And because I would just continue to work. And I think really now in my position is seeing other people grow, you know. It's important for me to train people and, you know, make people better with that. And it's kind of when somebody repeats something you said, you know, or in your call, you know you're doing something right because you hear them kind of, you know, parrot to what you're doing when you're out on a call. And I think, you know, you and I both that way is when I go into a dealership, like a lot of the people that work for me are like, it's just organic for you. It's like two guys, you know, having a beer, you know, because they want to bring in all these decks and everything. We don't even know what he wants to do. Like, let's just have a conversation first. And it's Iheart was known for like 50-page decks and talking about Iheart's great and this stuff. Like, they don't want to know. Yeah, right. They don't want to know about. They want to know about, like, what can you do for me? Talk to me about my business. Right. You know, and that's really what it gets down to. I think it becomes, you know, I won't bring a computer in. I'll just have a conversation with them, and I feel comfortable under that rooftop, which I know you do too. It's like, you know, so I think that's what's important. So
many of our best presentations to dealers really were not presentations at the beginning, but were really, you go in, you sit down and you talk and ask questions and listen. Mm-hmm. You know, let's talk about your business. You know, not everybody wants, listen, some guys just want you to come in, make your pitch, right? But we've been fortunate to have a number of scenarios where, you know, where we clearly said up front, the first round, we're going to show you who we are as a company, and then we're going to talk a lot about your business, and I'm going to get a lot of information about your business. Then we're going to tailor something for you, right?
Yeah.
You can't make a guy a custom suit if you don't know what he likes and what size he wears, right? And it's the same thing in our business. So many companies make the mistake of not taking that time to establish some rapport, right? It's sales 101, you know, introduce who you are, establish some rapport, and then ask the exploratory questions that are going to give you the knowledge that you need to provide something that can help them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that success also is just be a student of the business, and that's sometimes you got to really want to, we have 1,600 A's across the country. Oof. And the thing about it is not all of them have a taste for automotive. In fact, a lot of them are like, oh, it's erratic business, it's up and down, and they'll tell me, I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like what you're saying is absolutely right, but some of us, like the two of us, we just have that feel for it, like I said, it's in our blood, it's in our DNA, with that. So I think that it's not for everybody though. You'll get in there and some people, they don't have a taste for it.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. You mentioned discipline, and sitting here across from you, you look like a pretty fit guy. You look like a guy who takes his physical fitness pretty seriously. Would that be an accurate statement?
Well, I eat so much that you're right. I got to do that. So I'm on the road going to restaurants and everything like that. So yeah, I try to do it on the road.
What's your thing with training and health and fitness?
So one of the things I like to still go in and lift, but I've also as you get older, you got to change it up a little bit, with that. But I like to, bike ride. What I did in the last, I cut it off, but in the last year, I went to one of these boxing gyms and I started doing that. And that is an insane workout. Like you are drenched when you leave there, and they'd have you, you're hitting the bag and you're doing box jumps and you're doing all this stuff. And so to me, that was like, if you want an extreme workout, that's it, definitely.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Do you find that, of course I know the answer to this, but maintaining good health and fitness, particularly in our business, when you're visiting clients, there's a lot of meals.
Yes,
it can be very easy to fall off track with your health and fitness when you're going out to dinners and lunches and all that stuff. But do you find the discipline, in the gym with health and fitness helps you with the?
For sure. I mean, look at the guy who was at one time your boss over there. He was pretty stoked guy. I mean, definitely
still is.
Jordan, like definitely with that. So I think it gives you kind of an edge, don't you think? Like it
100%. Over a few years ago, I started training for triathlon, and I got myself in really good shape. Did 3 races in 2019, and then of course COVID, and my wife and I had a baby, and a lot of people who follow me on social media know that I'm kicking back into my training program. So I'm kind of updating a lot via social media. But you mentioned Jordan. And I will tell you that there's hardly a day that goes by that guy's influence from a perspective of a number of things, but let's talk health and fitness, doesn't rattle in my head.
Right.
He was notorious for, at first he was getting up at 4:30 and getting his workout in before the first one in the office. And then it's like it got earlier. The guy's still, I'm guessing he's in his early to mid 60s. He's still crazy fit, still doing it. And you know what? I find that so inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely, and it fits his personality and kind of how he is with that. I'd always see him doing these videos, and he'd have his arms up there, and he's got these jacked arms, man. He does,
totally jacked.
But it was kind of, it fit his confidence level and everything like that. It was who he was.
It makes a big difference. Like I follow a lot of these guys on social media, even like Arnold.
Yeah.
I just saw a video of him the other day, and like he's just like. He's doing, and I'm not I don't know as much about lifting, but he's like doing some kind of deadlift on some contraption. And he's just like, but he's 72.
Yeah.
And Stallone is the same way too. They're both early 70s, and these guys are freaking huge. And you watch that and you just go, that's inspiring to me.
Right.
Right. Like you just got to stay after it forever.
Yeah.
Because when you fall off of it, as you start to get a little bit older, boy, it starts to get a little bit difficult.
Definitely it does. Definitely for sure. It does.
Let's kind of veer around outside of, working in automotive, John, what are things in your life that provide you a sense of pleasure, accomplishment, enjoyment? Like what else do you like to do?
I think, we do a lot. I have a son who's now older. He's 26. I do a lot of things with him. Like I said, bikes, different things like that.
Right.
I'm a big sports fan. I'm really big into sports. So I like a lot of sports with that. And then, work is like, it's kind of like, could I ever leave this? Because it's like there's a frantic pace that we go by, right, in advertising, and it's kind of like my wife's like, you like that pace, and she's right in a way. It's almost a high. There's a high to I'm in this meeting, I got this meeting going on, I've got emails coming in left and right, and I think in marketing, it becomes a high for us.
There's an excitement, for me, and we've talked about this before here. And for us, particularly in the agency side, where not only is there like that excitement and that drive to get things done, but that whole deadline thing,
right.
That knowing that not only do you have to come up with the idea, come up with the strategy, execute the strategy, but there's a clock ticking.
Yeah.
And so you can't just say, yeah, we're going to do this and not. I mean, there's a deadline looming at all times, which it does stimulate.
And I think we talked about that even when I was at the Plain Dealer. You had to corral those two guys, man. That was not easy to do. And I remember it was always down to the last minute.
Yes.
They'd make these changes on this stuff, and it would come in. So yeah, that was no easy task.
Yeah, shout out to Todd and Eric.
right, exactly. So, but they were your perfect things. Those guys are great guys.
Yes.
With that, and it was definitely that was definitely an exciting time. But you're right. You're always caught on deadlines. You've gotta get stuff. There's always something to do, right?
It's exciting. Yes, there's always something to do. It has changed a little bit because as we've moved away from print and things are online, it's not like with the newspaper where that was always the ultimate deadline, right? That was, the presses are rolling in 45 minutes. We need it here. Like, you have 5 minutes to get here. Just hold off one moment.
Right, exactly.
But it was exciting. And you were alluding to something which I think a lot of us feel, which is like, and I'm a long way from this, you're a long way from this, but how do you stop doing something that you love, that you enjoy, that's so satisfying? I can't imagine. I was talking to a good friend last night, and he is in his 70s, and he's like, I just don't think I can ever retire. Like, I always want to keep doing something, stay active, and I feel the same way. Like, gotta keep doing something.
It's competitive too. I think we're competitors with that too. So
right.
I mean, I've been in airports where I got a layover, and I go into our financials, and I look at somebody who's in my position, one of the other VPs, and I'm like going, yeah, I'm not doing great this quarter, but I'm doing better than him. So it's always that type of thing. So I think it's a competitive thing too. I think we're competitive people, or else we wouldn't be doing this, right?
Right. And dealers are the same way.
Yeah.
It's a competitive business. It's a competitive industry to serve, right? There's always somebody that can provide some version or something slightly different than you that might be different. Maybe it's better sometimes. Maybe it's not. You have to be willing to fight and keep your edge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool, John. Well, you've done it, man. I know you've been doing it for some time.
Yeah, you too. So with all that stuff, even though you don't look like you're been in the business for 25 years, that's the thing,
Thank you. Well, neither do you, man. I guess we're aging well. It's the fitness, right?
Yeah, right. I think maybe it is that. Yeah. So
let's pat ourselves on the back.
Right. There you go.
We're doing great.
So you're down here in beautiful South Florida, so that's a difference too. You get
it's a good place to live.
You get up north, that'll age you up there, So, a lot of ethnic food and, craft beers and everything like that. So,
yeah. It's all, you got to balance it all out, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, John, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
I appreciate it. It's good to know more about you and your company and your business and what you bring to the industry. So, thank you very much for spending some time with me today.
I appreciate that, and appreciate you just showing you around this office, because I love it. It's definitely so different, but I think when you showed us each aspect of it, it was so much personal for you. So that's what I liked about it.
Thank you so much. Yeah. That means a lot to me.
Yep.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
Cheers. Peace.